I'd like to welcome everyone back to the public session of the GIL Scrutiny Committee. The next item is Agenda 9, which is the revised parking policy update. We'll now receive a verbal update from Councillor Rozelle, portfolio holder for planning, highways and transport, on the revised parking policy. Scrutiny has been involved in the parking strategy and policy from its conception. It's a topic that is of great interest to the villages and surrounding Rutland Water and our Mount Cook town. So, Councillor Rozelle, over to you for the latest update.
Thank you so much, and also thank you to members for inviting me this evening. Just a little bit of background, which members of course will be aware of. The draft policy was approved by Cabinet on the 21st December 2021, and the policy superseded the 2011 strategic parking review and outlined updated policies and procedures to help us safely and effectively manage our highway network. Cabinet also approved delegated authority to approve any changes to the document post consultation was provided to the strategic director for places in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning, highways and transport, which of course now is myself. In terms of development, public and political input was sought at an early stage prior to the development of the new parking policy, and working with then Councillor Stevenson to inform the initial scope of the policy, it had two elements. So early engagement took place, as you said, with parishes and ward members between late 2020 and March 2021 to identify strategic areas of concern, not site specific, that they wanted to see covered by the new policy. And in October 2020, the GIR panel, again, as you said, were provided with the opportunity to review the existing document and provide steer on the content of the new draft policy. Also then, feedback from the future Rutland conversation was considered during the preparation of the document. Then looking forward slightly to the public consultation. So the policy is now out for public consultation, in fact started on the 28th of March and will close at midnight on Sunday the 1st of May, which provides a 5-week response period. A press release and social media have also been undertaken to promote the consultation, along with a wide-ranging stakeholder mail out. The public consultation seeks feedback on the overarching vision and objectives of the parking policy, along with the specific policies contained within it. The policy is also available online, or a hard copy can be viewed at Rutland Libraries. Respondents can apply online or via a paper survey. We will accept email and telephone feedback where individuals are unable to respond by other means. We've had 20 responses so far via the online survey platform. Once that's completed, and I suppose this is the next steps element, after the closing date, a summary consultation report would be produced, which will summarise the feedback received and outline any areas that may require change. And I think, personally, that's probably the most important part for me. The report will be presented to myself and the director for review and consideration as to whether any changes are required. And I'm keeping an open mind on that. So in terms of an overview of the new parking policy, our vision outlined within the new policy is to deliver public parking provision, including infrastructure and enforcement, that supports our county's economy and environmental goals by enabling residents, businesses and visitors to safely access and enjoy local services and amenities. The primary objectives to ensure the safety of those using our highway, however they choose to travel, to provide access to services and enable the efficient movement of vehicles through our towns and along key routes, and ensure parking provision and other parking services are economically sustainable. They're supported by a number of secondary objectives designed to ensure delivery of the policy contributes to a wider policy goals locally and nationally. Firstly, to protect our rural environment, then to reduce our impact on the environment by encouraging behavioural change and a reduction in car use, to encourage and educate residents to take responsibility for their choices and support the local economy. Chair, if I may, that's my verbal update so far, but I'm delighted to take questions now and from members as they see.
Does anybody have any questions? I have a recommendation, but Mark, Councillor Oxley.
Thank you. Yes, I've actually shared the public consultation press release. I shared it to Nextdoor, Uppingham Nextdoor, which has got 1,400 people on it, but I didn't notice anybody actually picking up on it. So 20 responses. So when does it finish again, Ian? What date? The consultation?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I get the date right. So it is I think it's a Sunday. It's Sunday the 1st of May, midnight, Sunday the 1st of May.
Okay. And how many, I mean, you say you've had 20 responses, but which isn't very many. What happens if we don't get that many responses? If we only get another sort of 10 to 20, will that, how much emphasis will that be placed when it comes to reviewing the parking policy?
No, it's a really good question. I think I can't answer it at the moment is the point, but what I can do is take that away as a very, very clear push from GIR that we need to be on the front foot and really pushing hard on all of our media opportunities, whether it's on social media, on the council website, to encourage people. And I think, Mark, that the point you're making, if I'm right, is that this is absolutely the business and the public opportunity to comment, and we really do want them to tell us what they think, because if they don't tell us what we think or what they think, then it is an opportunity missed.
Yeah, that's right. I totally agree.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to take that away. I'll speak to our comms people tomorrow about what we can do. But Penny has a hand up as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Penny.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say, just to add to that, as you'd expect, we are using all of our channels that we would normally use around promoting consultation. Again, I think there's a really helpful role that members can play in their wards and promoting, particularly through parish councils. And I'm really grateful to you, Councillor Oxley, for promoting on Nextdoor. It worked really effectively with the waste consultation, and we got a really good response to that. So I think, again, I would really appreciate ward members taking an active role in promoting the consultation and helping us with that.
Gail, Councillor Waller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think one of the problems we have in terms of responses on something like parking is people see the word parking. If they live in Oakham or Uppingham and go into the town centre and have problems, either parking or problems with parked cars, it doesn't really matter, they think, oh, this is important for me. If they live out in the villages, they think, well, we don't have yellow lines, we have parking problems, but the council's not interested. And our chairman mentioned, or somebody, sorry, I can't remember who it was now. Yeah, it was June, mentioned Rutland Water. And yes, year after year, we have problems parking associated with Rutland Water. But people have become, not blasé, it's not quite the right word, but they feel that nothing's being done, and they certainly haven't been engaged with it in the past. So they're not going to wade through a big document or a big thing online. And I think that's part of the problem. That isn't to say I'm not going to promote it locally within my villages, I will do. But I think that's just an explanation of why people have not jumped at this one, whereas some other things like waste, that equally affects everybody. Just an observation. Thank you.
Chair, may I come back? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, firstly, I think just going back to Mark's comments and those from Penny, I think one of the really positive things I can do, perhaps through officers, is engage directly with parish councils, because of course there are comments from parish councils on a regular basis regarding parking, and it would be really important, I think, if their voice is heard as part of this consultation process. Of course, we've opened it to everybody, but if we put out a specific request that they come back to us with their views on parking, and then perhaps, Gail, that would pick up not just the views of the two principal towns, but also the very important views of the parishes and how they feel they're being listened to or not. And if they're not being listened to, well, that isn't right. So we need to change that.
Councillor Oxley, you had your hand up, and then Councillor Brown, I actually do have some comments to make on this as well.
Well, all I was going to say was I don't think that the town council actually has it as an agenda item for their meeting next Wednesday. So it is an opportunity that's been missed. It would have been helpful if perhaps we contacted them directly and asked them to feedback on the consultation. I may be wrong, but from memory, I don't think it is on the agenda, and it's too late to ask for it to be put on now. But I will mention it to the town clerk and see if anything can be done, and to the mayor as well. But I'm not sure whether or not it'll be too late, because May the 1st they won't be having a meeting after in time until after the consultation finishes. But I'll mention it to the town clerk anyway.
Thank you, Mark.
Councillor Brown, Gordon.
I was going to make exactly the same remark. This is a problem we continually have with communications with parish councils. If you're going to communicate with parish councils, you've got to give them the full 6 weeks, because they need time to either meet the first meeting, if it's 2 or 3 weeks away, to get it on the agenda, or if it's the second meeting, then fine. But then the next meeting in May is typically going to be the annual meeting, which causes its own problems. And you've got all the formal work to do, as we do at annual council, and then the rest is taken very quickly normally. I think there is an issue, and maybe Penny can pick this up on a wider front, and that is this issue of making sure that communications actually copy in parish councils and members on each and every one of these consultations, and that way you're halfway there. I know that to be fair to the CCG and the NHS, which we can be critical of at times, they have been very good at getting information out through the parish council, and also direct to our village email, which goes around sort of 75% of our village. So it's these sort of ways of communicating that we seem to miss at times.
Penny, you have a hand up.
Yes, so just to for everyone's awareness, that the consultation is promoted through the Rutland Roundup, which is, as you know, is intended, well, does in fact go to all members and parishes, and is our primary channel for talking to parishes on a weekly basis. I can certainly pick up the point around notifying the parishes directly, and I think with Councillor Rozelle, on this consultation specifically. Again, it would be helpful. I think as you'll recall from your early engagement around the parking strategy, this time around we have tried hard to give consideration to the villages, and particularly those areas that come under pressure around Rutland Water. So there are policies within this parking strategy that try to address some of the concerns. They will, I don't think they will necessarily address all of the concerns that we hear from our residents, but I think that hopefully this does go some way to considering those issues that do come up from villages and Rutland Water. And again, if you can prompt people to have a look at those particular policies and comment on those, that would be really helpful.
Chair, if I may, just to reinforce that, I am very conscious that we don't get ahead of ourselves in telling a parish council about something before the members are aware. I know members are very keen that if something's given to the parish council, that they know about it before it gets to the parish council. So I suspect there's a little bit of reverse engineering in terms of timing and process, so that we can facilitate that. But I did want to pick up on the roundup. I'm sure members get that, but it may just be that we need to put some words in there just to demonstrate how we think GIR, well, how you've told us that you'd like us to communicate, and we can do something to make that work better.
Mark, Councillor Oxley, have your hand up.
Very, very quickly. Yes, very quickly. As I say, I don't know. It may be an agenda item. I don't remember seeing it, but there is a 10-minute public speaking spot as an agenda item when the public are invited. So I will stand up next Wednesday and ask people to, because that's recorded as well. So those listening and all members of the council, town council, will also hear it. But it may be an agenda item, in which case I won't bother. But if it isn't, then I will stand up and invite people to take part then.
Thank you, Mark. That's really kind. Thank you.
I'd like to come in if I may, or do you want to go first, Penny? Or I will certainly drop a note to the members of the Rutland Water Partnership meeting. I don't think they're meeting until May, but on our meetings that we have, the parking around Rutland Water is always a general discussion. So I shall make sure that they've actually replied to the consultation. And I will also speak to all my my parishes in my ward. It was on Exton's agenda last Wednesday. Hambleton have been very involved or very vocal about the parking. And also, Gail, I know that Edith Weston has been very concerned about their parking as well. And obviously they sit on the Rutland Water Partnership Board. So I will drop that, and hopefully I think that we all need to do a little bit and sort of, I suppose, you know, just chivvy people along and make sure that they actually do respond, because people will say, well, you don't listen to us, but you have to actually speak to us for us to listen. So I think that really it should come down to members to chivvy up their sort of like their parishes, and also perhaps promote it more on their social media websites as well, to get people to actually have their say as well. Penny, do you want to come back in?
Thank you. Yes, it was just a suggestion that we could take away from this discussion, with and certainly I'd be happy to sort of discuss this with Councillor Rozelle. But this consultation isn't actually time bound. There isn't a specific time pressure on the parking consultation. So if it, and I'll take the point around May being sort of annual meetings for parish council. So if we could take from here, if that's something that the committee was minded to recommend, that we revisit the time scales around this consultation.
Do we have any other comments at all?
I think that would be a very,
see any.
sorry. I think that would be a very useful, yeah, if it could be extended to allow the parishes to get involved, that would be very helpful. But as I say, that's between the portfolio holder and the director.
Councillor Waller, you have your hand up.
I propose that this committee recommends that the portfolio holder and officer seriously consider extending the consultation period to facilitate parish and town council involvement. Do I have a seconder?
I would second that. All the hands went up.
The motion's carried then. Okay, so I'd like to draw this item to a close now. We move on to item number 10, which is domestic waste and related contracts. We've received a report number 70, 2022 from Councillor Stevenson, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder of Communities, Environmental and Climate Change. The committee has been involved in the waste strategy from the start. It notes the ongoing concerns from our residents through the Rutland conversation. I will now hand over to Councillor Stevenson to introduce the report.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Chair. I think the majority of the content of this report you are all aware of, so I'm not proposing going through that. You will see what Cabinet has agreed to go out to soft market testing with. Within that, because I know that this was very clearly expressed at Cabinet, and I believe by this panel and by the Waste Board, there will be variations within that. So, for example, being very clear about what the cost difference is between 2 weekly, 3 weekly, 4 weekly. So rest assured we have listened to that. I think what is perhaps useful for the panel to have an update on is the soft market testing. There is 1 week to go. It will be finishing on the 13th of April. So far, 56 parties had registered initial interest. 13 have now dropped out. I'll leave you to do the maths on that. We haven't had formal responses yet, but apparently I've been assured it is very usual for formal responses to come in on the deadline, so basically the 13th of April. If by some terrible chance there are no submissions, there is a plan B, which is to use the contacts and networks to approach specific companies with that. So that's the soft market testing. I also think it would be very helpful to remind you, already know this, that the final decision that comes to council is the one at which hopefully we will be awarding a contract. I don't need to point out the medium-term financial plan context, but I'm happy to take any questions, and obviously Mrs. Sharp is here as well to assist with that.
Councillor Molly, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. The paper was quite clear, and it will be what it will be. And at the end of the day, I fully understand that. I was a bit concerned, though, to see reference somewhere in it to sacks for collecting paper and card. It did occur to me today, as I was trying to move something, that paper is actually jolly heavy. And we have an old population. So I hope that whatever we do, we have a wheelie bin for paper and card. Otherwise, my paper and card is going to go into a wheelie bin because there's no way I'm going to be able to lift it with my shoulder the way it is. That's only my observation. I know public was saying the same thing. I'm perfectly well aware of that, but I do feel strongly about it. So thank you, Chairman, for indulging me and allowing me to reiterate that.
Yep, and I think on page 31, it has got the 50% for a bin, 24% for a box, and 15% for a bag. So I think you are echoing, Councillor Waller, the residents' views. I'll just bring in Mrs. Sharp on that one as well.
Thank you. I was going to say exactly the same thing, that overwhelmingly the public supported the use of a bin, but it's important that we ask the market around what from an operational perspective and from a cost perspective they would consider to be the most appropriate option. But certainly on the basis of this public consultation response and from sort of practical reasons, it seems sensible that we would look to reuse the current bin stock and repurpose that for the mixed card and paper recycling.
Councillor Oxley, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, and I have stressed at this point in past meetings, I think we must not confuse people. And people are used to seeing a grey bin for recycling, a black bin for black waste, green bin for green waste. So, and there will have, because we're bringing in the food waste as well. And in order to, and I think if we start trying to bring in new containers or anything like that, people won't know what it's doing, and they'll just chuck it all in the black bin. So it is very important that, and the other thing is paper tends to get soggy if you leave it out in the rain. So I wouldn't have paper by any stretch of the imagination. I just wanted to make that point.
Brilliant. And also thank you, Mark, because actually I think it's really important to note that actually the sheer length of this project is reflective of the fact that there will be significant behaviour change for all of our residents. So sitting along with this is a very extensive, very thorough communication strategy. And I know that you and I, Marcus, are doing our bit in Rutland Climate Action and that sort of thing. And again, what I will be doing, and it's, you know, it's been useful to have this item on the agenda, keeping this sort of constantly in the public mind, various campaigns about reducing waste, etc. Hopefully we as members can do our bit, supporting when we get to the point of awarding a contract, mobilisation of the contract, and well, I mean, behaviour change is behaviour change. It needs to happen, but we will need to work really, really hard on delivering that one effectively.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Chair, if I'm not mistaken, I seem to remember something in the guidance, the Environment Bill, that we're going to have a standard set of colours for each of the waste streams, so that when you travel around the country, you know exactly which bin to put what in. I thought that was one of the objectives of the Environment Bill. Maybe Penny or Lucy can comment on that.
We haven't, and you can have a drum roll and a bit of surprise, Councillor Brown, we haven't had specific guidelines and details on the delivery of that. I suspect it is, I like the idea of me being able to trot off to the Outer Hebrides, being safe with where to put my tin. I do think then, not in the Outer Hebrides, Gordon shaking his head. Not, of course not Scotland. It was a little joke to try to appeal to your nationality, Councillor Brown. But joking apart, I think the guidelines will be interesting on that, because that's a heck of a cost to put onto local authorities or providers to have exactly the same bins across England. But we'll wait with details. I don't think, Mrs. Sharp, we've had any further detail on that suggestion.
Well, I'm correct in saying that was one of the objectives.
Yeah, one of the, yes, absolutely. So one of the objectives around particularly this aspect of the Environment Bill Now Act was around trying to get much greater consistency across the whole country in terms of collection methodologies. That there's, as you're aware, there's quite a lot of detail that's subject to secondary legislation and guidance, and as Councillor Stevenson said, we are still awaiting quite a lot of that.
Thank you.
Councillor Waller.
Thank you. It was on the point that Lucy made about advertising, communicating with our residents. I have to commend whoever had the bright idea of the sticker to go on the bin. I thought that was brilliant. Mine is stuck on one of my 2 bins, and I have actually referred to it, despite the fact that I do recycle an awful lot, just to be doubly sure. So I thought that was great. But can we also have, when we do change it, a frequently asked question? Because it did occur to me the other day on the food waste. Can you put pet food that the pets don't eat into the food waste? I don't know. And I have more of that than any other food waste in my household, I have to say. And it's that sort of thing. And I think frequently asked questions would be really quite helpful. Thank you.
If I could just come back on the sticker, I would say that this is the joy of 3-way working. A resident popped into the bookshop to say to me, thing is, Lucy, people aren't terribly sure what to recycle. I've read your blog. So I trotted to the very fabulous Emily Fricker, who investigated it, obviously with Mrs. Sharp. It has been at no additional cost whatsoever. So actually it's a small A5 sticker, but I am counting it as a really proud achievement for 2022. I may or may not need to get out more, but I'm very chuffed with that. Thank you for mentioning, Councillor Waller.
Councillor Oxley, would you like to come back in briefly?
Yeah, very, very briefly. And that is critical. As I said before, education is so important. And now even my wife understands what has to go in the black and the grey bin. One question about food waste, though, that we're going to have to be very specific. For example, we recently ate a trout which have been pulled out of Rutland water, and what do you do with the bones, and you know, how long do we just put it straight in the black bin, to the bottom of the black bin, and but people will need to know what to do with stuff which is going to start going smelly after a little while. So it's things like that, questions like that, I'm sure people will be wanting to know. So education, 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 to quote a particular politician who I shouldn't really mention in these circles. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. I'd like to draw this item to a close now, and I'd like to confirm that the committee has noted the decision made by Cabinet of the preferred option 2BII for waste and recycling collections, as set out below. 1, dry mix recycling with paper and cardboard to be collected separately every fortnight. 2, separate weekly food waste collections. And 3, reduced capacity residual waste bins to be collected fortnightly. So moving on to item 11, which is the leisure update. We've received a report 71/2022 from Councillor Stevenson, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder of Communities, Environmental and Climate Change. There's been a tremendous amount of public interest in our leisure facilities this year, so it's extremely important that there is a public record of ongoing work and continued members' input. I will now hand over to Councillor Stevenson to introduce the report.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Chair. Now, this decision was taken on Tuesday, but as you mentioned, the public interest, I think, is really important. And I'm also going to take the opportunity to update on the stakeholder board and where we've got to so far. I will be going in reverse order and starting with the second item for noting, which is with regard to the demolition of the swimming pool. As members are aware, that swimming pool was unfortunately very much at the end of its design life. However, the contract with Catmos College was running until 2032. As members of this panel are aware, with the significant amount of work that's been happening, the significant amount of questions and public interest, Chair, as you have mentioned, it has, however, been felt wise and sensible to actually get out of the contract, get the swimming pool demolished. It cannot be fixed. We've negotiated, and I will definitely say incredibly well done to Mrs. Sharp and Mr. Clayton with this. It will be a cost of £150,000. You will note under the financial considerations, it wasn't covered in the medium-term financial plan, but it is proposed that the money comes from reserves, and it is considered to be of mutual benefit for us to sort of get a line drawn under and moved on. The other thing that has been explored as well, because I absolutely understand residents on social media, petitions, etc., saying that they're really, there should be a publicly owned, council-owned swimming pool in the county. I understand the sentiment. I would, however, draw the attention to the costs of getting a swimming pool. There are some projected costs in the paper, but I'm going to give you some real live happening costs. Hinckley, which opened in 2016, that cost 15 million. And please bear in mind, this is the capital investment required. It does not even start talking about any revenue running costs. Colville and Whittick, 22.5 million. Bedworth, 24 million, which is due to open in 2024. And I would say that that actually underscores that the question for Rutland is around accessibility to swimming, cost for swimming, and capacity that we have in pools. Having a council-run facility in some ways is a little bit of a red herring, I think. It's about residents getting accessibility. You will also note, because I know that was one of the comments in the petition, was concern around swimming lessons for primary age children. You will note that both Uppingham and Oakham schools have increased their offer for primary school aged children. I will now move on to the second part, the first part, which is noting that we are progressing with some procurement for dry side only leisure management. There has been soft market testing conducted. There have been interests, I think, from about 3 different companies. This isn't a case of leaping off and procuring something. It would have to come back to Cabinet, and I should imagine that this panel would be very keen to see that. Just also to comment as well on the stakeholder group, members of this panel had some mapping work circulated, which had already been conducted by the stakeholder group. We have now had 2 meetings to date. We've agreed the terms of reference. Mapping, as you've seen, has happened, and it really is looking at accessibility, capacity and cost for our residents, because obviously, and I'll finish on this point, clearly part of being healthy and well, living well, social activity, mental health, the full remit, that does come down to having a really nice broad leisure offer within the county. But I think that principle of it is a whole county provision. We've got many wonderful things happening across there, and we will continue to work hard. And in your hands, Chair, in terms of sort of at what point you want to hear from this again, whether formally or informally, etc., etc. Happy to take questions. And as ever, I may nip over to Mr. Clayton if you've stumped me on a question. Thank you, Chair.
You're on mute, June.
I know, that's because Jane muted me.
Oh, oh right.
I don't know why. Very, very cheeky of her, I have to say. I have words later. Do we have any questions? Gordon, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just to really say congratulations to Penny and to Robert. They're doing a cracking deal, because I know in the discussions I had with Penny and predecessors before that, and Robert in particular, just the issues we faced. So to come out with the sort of numbers we're looking at is just very impressive, I think, given the liabilities we might have had. So well done, both of you. In fact, well done, the whole team.
Thank
Do we have
you.
any more?
If I may, Chair, just to say it, it was very much a team effort, but I very much appreciate the comments, and we'll pass them on to the team.
Well, thank you, Councillor Stevenson, for that excellent update, which has been very useful, because we've been looking at leisure throughout the year, and it's nice to keep it on the agenda to know what's actually happening and where we are. And as I say, there has been a tremendous amount of public interest on social media about it, and I think that we need to, keep on top of this and keep the public involved with what we're doing and where they can go and get their swimming from, really. So I'd like to draw this item to a close. I'd like to confirm the committee has noted the recommendations to Cabinet, the Director of Places, in consultation with the Cabinet member with Portfolio Communities, Environmental and Climate Change, to progress the procurement of dry side only leisure management contract for the Catmas Sports Centre on a nil cost basis for both the Council and Catmas College, following the soft market testing undertaken in partnership with the Welland Procurement. Award of any contracts will be subject to Cabinet approval as part of the procurement process. B, noted that the recommendation to Cabinet to the termination of the Council's lease for Catmas Core and auxiliary sports hall area of Catmas campus, and the contribution of a maximum of 150,000 to Catmas College to facilitate the demolition of the pool, which will reduce the risks associated with the derelict part of the site and enable the Catmas campus to rebuild the work to be expedited. That's kind of long recommendation. Anyway, we go on to item number 12, a review of board plan and annual work plan 2021 to 22. Following the scrutiny review and the dependent on the decision made at council on Monday the 11th, there will be a new format possibly for scrutiny. As a result, a draft work plan has been outlined for the next constitutional year listing possible future items for discussion. Are there any items that are presently we wish to see considered at that future meeting? I think we have a few, don't we? Councillor Oxley, would you like to mention then, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, well, I was going to mention the property asset review. That was on the forward plan in September. I don't think that it's ready yet to come to this place or whatever is going to be proposed in the future, but I would like to see the property asset review brought to us at some point in the future.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I support that fully. In fact, I'd like to see it come sooner rather than later, rather than it comes a fait accompli saying this is what we plan to do. There's really no point in scrutiny being, looking at that. If we're going to have adding value to scrutiny, there should be input at an early stage, not at a late stage. I think we've had discussions at CRWG on that one. The other thing is the whole question of what is sustainability in terms of the local plan. And I can see the horror in Penny's eyes when I said that. But seriously, I think there is a question mark at sustainability and understanding what that is, understanding what it is in terms of Rutland as we move forward in the local plan. It's not about looking at the detail, it's looking about the strategic element of that. So that's an idea I'd throw out as an opportunity.
Penny, would you like to come back on that one, please?
I was only to say that my eyes weren't, they weren't going up in horror. It was actually because we've got a draft paper in the process of being developed to try and help define what is sustainability in the context of the local plan.
Excellent.
So that would work.
I wasn't aware of that. So I wasn't giving you a lead in there, Penny. But I think it's something which I think is very fundamental to the taking forward the next phases of the local plan, and therefore to have a real understanding, all members having a real understanding of that would be beneficial. Because I'd like to understand it.
Okay, I would like to have the comments that come back from the parking consultation to look at those and to ensure that we're taking those on board for the next step on that proposal. Anything else at all? Oh, sorry, Gail, I didn't see you got your hand up.
Thank you. I think as a matter of course, this or any subsequent scrutiny committee should be looking at any consultation and how it is responded to, because the consultations that we do, it's us asking our residents. And if we then say, yes, that's very nice, folks, but we're not going to change our original plan, then first of all, it isn't genuine consultation. And secondly, I think it's offensive to our residents. So I think that should be a matter of course, June. I'm supporting you on that, but for all of them, not just that one. And we have tonight been talking about culture. I think that needs to be on the agenda. In what form precisely at this moment in time, I wouldn't like to suggest, and we are going to have our informal meeting to look at it a bit further, but it's something that's going to be ongoing for quite some while, and it is again important to our residents. So I think again that's something that potentially scrutiny needs to be looking at going forward. And whilst I don't necessarily totally agree with the sustainability bit that Gordon said, not least because I wasn't quite sure what he meant, I do actually think there will be elements of the local plan going forward that scrutiny will want to look at. I wouldn't want to define them at this moment in time, but they need to be there ready for whomever takes over as the Scrutiny Commission in whatever guise the Scrutiny Commission is going forward. Thank you.
Mark, briefly.
Yeah, because I say it's a bit difficult because we can't really preempt the decision that council will make next Monday, but I think so. But we have to carry on as businesses as usual until council makes the decision. But I would just following on from what Gail said about consultations, we must do that at the very maximise the potential of every single outlet that we can, in order to ensure that we get as broad input as possible. And ward members have got a part to play in that. I'm sure that Penny is, they're working flat out to ensure that as many people as possible are getting to it, but ward members have a part to play as well. So that must be really pressed home to all members of the council.
Well, thank you. So I'd like to draw the meeting to a close. Future meetings will be confirmed at annual council on the 9th of May. If there's no further questions, I would really like to thank Penny and Robert for the time, and Councillor Stevenson. And thank you all for this evening. And I will close this meeting at 5 to 9.
Sorry, Chair. Just to make sure, does anybody have any urgent business they would like to raise? No? Okay.
Good. So the meeting's closed at 5 to 9. Okay. Good night, everybody. Jane, will you fire over those